van Doorn from Mindfunda.com. I'm a Dutch psychologist, I'm a blogger, I'm an automolecular therapist, which means that I know something about the food and health. And I have a blog called Mindfunda.com. Please visit my blog and subscribe to the email newsletter, monthly newsletter, that gives you a lot of information about psychology, mythology, and spirituality, all to make your life more easy and better. And please, while you're at it, subscribe to my YouTube channel because I'll be uploading a lot of good videos. My guest today is Robert Waggoner. Welcome, Robert.
Oh, thanks, Suzanne. I'm happy to be here.
Robert is a lucid dreamer since 1975. He is past president of the EISD, the International Association for the Study of Dreams. He is co-editor of an online magazine, The Lucid Dreaming Experience. He is author of Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Self, and author of a new book that we are talking about today, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple. Welcome, Robert. Can you tell me what triggered you to write this new book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple?
You know, I felt that a lot of science had taken place in the last 20 years since Stephen LaBerge's book, Exploring the World of Lucid Dreaming. And so I thought lucid dreamers needed some of the new science, some of the new techniques that we've used to become lucidly aware. And I found a wonderful person in London, Carolyn McCready, and she attended a number of my workshops and talks there. And so I asked her to join me in writing this new book, Lucid Dreaming, Plain and Simple.
Okay. Oh, thank you. For the sake of this interview, I've divided this new book, which contains of 13 chapters, in 4 parts, and I will divide the interviews according to those 4 parts. The first part is the core basic technologies about lucid dreaming. The second part is more of the fine-tuning of those techniques. The third part is about lucid dreaming and healing. And the final chapter is about what Robert really is an expert at, lucid living. So, for the first part, and that was what I really liked about the first part. There are a lot of parts I liked about the first part, but you talk about the paradox of lucid dreaming, being awake while being asleep. And my experience, when I am dreaming and I'm getting into a lucid state, I'm getting such a lot of energy, and I'm lucid, let's party. And that's why I was wondering why you call it a paradox, because Jung says there's a lot of psychological energy when you confront opposites. So I thought, well, maybe that could explain that high that a lot of lucid dreamers have. You know you are sleeping, but you are awake. But you call it a paradox. Can you explain why?
Well, for me, the paradoxical aspect is that you're conscious in what people normally call the unconscious. And so that's the paradox, becoming conscious when you're normally supposed to be unconscious in the dream state. That's the paradoxical aspect. But you are right. Oftentimes when people become lucidly aware, one of their first responses is a lot of joy and energy and kind of a sense of euphoria that they've become lucidly aware. So a lot of energy does appear, but the paradox is the aspect of being conscious in the unconscious.
Yeah. Okay. And also in this part of the book, you mentioned that that children are exceptionally good at lucid dreaming. Now, I've got 2 kids myself, and they have lucid dreams also. But I was wondering, were you a lucid dreamer as a child?
You know, probably my first lucid dream occurred when I was 10 years old. I was in the library, the public library, looking at books, when all of a sudden I saw a dinosaur walk by. And it occurred to me, even as a 10-year-old, that dinosaurs do not exist. And then it occurred to me, oh, this must be a dream. And so I became lucidly aware, but I didn't realize you could do anything, so I just told myself to wake up, and then I woke up. But there's been a wonderful study by Ursula Voss interviewing German school children, I think from ages 7 to 19. And she found that basically 51%, if I recall correctly, have had a lucid dream. And I think that really surprised them, the number of children who could remember becoming consciously aware in a dream and realizing it's a dream. So I think it's something that happens very early on because in society we don't talk about lucid dreaming that much, or especially with children. I think if we did, we'd discover that more children are having lucid dreams than we realize, and a very active dream life as well.
Do you think it's I'm not English, I'm sorry. Hereditary.
Yeah, is there any inheritance or
yeah, that's the correct
hereditary property?
Yeah.
The one interesting thing about this, I, like Stephen LaBerge, long ago, both realized that sometimes narcolepsy, the experience of suddenly falling asleep that some people have, oftentimes is much like a lucid dream. And a woman explained to me that she was narcoleptic. She was, at the time I talked to her, in her 70s. And she told me that oftentimes when she'd fall asleep in a narcoleptic sense, she was just consciously aware in this mental space. And she said it sounded just like a lucid dream, except she never knew she could do anything, so she never did anything. And there's been a recent study by Martin Dressler and some others showing that narcoleptics are 7 times more likely to be lucid dreamers than the average person. So to bring this to the portion of genetic expression or hereditary aspects, one of my uncles, who was captured in the Battle of the Bulge in World War II, developed narcolepsy after that. And so it does make me wonder if some of us who might have a predisposition to narcolepsy might actually be inherently or naturally better at lucid dreaming than others. But it's an interesting thing to think about. So we'll see. But in my family, I've come from a large family, 4 brothers and a sister, and probably only one of my brothers was a very good lucid dreamer. The others didn't really seem to follow the dreaming path like I did. So you just never know.
Okay. And in the first part, you have a lot of very, very attractive how-to exercises. And one of those exercises is so smart because you use a continuum that you've borrowed from Ed Kellogg to determine your lucidity level and to assign points each month for your lucidity level, and then challenge yourself to expand the level of points you have captured that month. And can you tell us something about that lucidity level, and about how people really like to get a level higher, and it's so playful.
Yeah, so what lucid dreamers realize is that oftentimes we have semi-lucid dreams. We realize something is wrong. We know that things aren't exactly right, but we don't become fully lucid. Or we might even tell someone, boy, this kind of seems like a dream that I had, but we don't become fully lucid and realize this is a dream. And so actually there's levels of lucidity. You can be pre-lucid or sub-lucid or semi-lucid or lucid, but you can also be fully lucid and kind of super lucid as well. And so in the book, I suggest to people, because not everyone's a great dreamer, I suggest they just make a game of it, that give yourself a certain number of points if you remember 3 dreams a night. Give yourself some more points if you become semi-lucid, if you talk to someone about dreaming or about lucid awareness, and then give yourself certain points if you become fully lucid, and so on. And by kind of making a game of it, I think you're much more likely to persist with it, because as a lucid dreamer, you really have to keep at it and persist with it.
And your advice for starting with those basic techniques that you and Caroline described in the book, you say stay with one technique and practice that one technique for a month.
Yeah, I feel that people oftentimes want to have instant success, but with lucid dreaming, you oftentimes have to get into the practice and develop the practice and get mature in the practice to kind of focus your intent. And so in the book, even though we give about a dozen techniques on how to become lucidly aware, we really want people to focus on one practice, give it their all, give it their total intent, and see how it goes. Because having that ability to persist with one keeps you from jumping from one to one to one to one and never really accomplishing much of anything. So that's why we encourage people to really focus on one and give it their best.
And it's not about creating a habit that you say, well, at least a month, because it takes that long to create a habit?
Well, normally if people are focused, normally within a week or so, it should be a well-defined idea in their mind and a well-defined practice. But we just say a month just to keep people from jumping from thing to thing. Uh, you know, Also, it'll show you that certain techniques will probably work for you better than others. Some people are more verbally oriented, and so suggestion might work better for them than some of the visualization techniques and so on. So by practicing a number, you get an idea of what works for you.
Okay, this is very interesting. Let's go to part 2. And in my eyes, I would like to hear what you think. In my eyes, part 2 was so much a part of a lucid dreaming gateway to the inner self, because it's so psychological, spiritual, thought-provoking, all those lovely how-to exercises. And one of them I wanted to ask you, it's about very fascinating how to about flip the expectation effect, because expectations in lucid dreams are almost always self-fulfilling prophecies. And I was wondering, it must have become a habit of you to also in waking life to flip your expectation, to become more aware of the effect of your own expectations.
Right. So the expectation effect is you get what you expect to the degree that you expect it at that moment. And that's something you see very obviously in lucid dreams. You become lucid, you know this is a dream, you decide to fly through a wall, you fly right through. And then what happened to me one time, I decided to fly back through the wall. And this time up from the other side, it looked more solid and more concrete. And all of a sudden, I had a moment's doubt. I expected a little bit of trouble. And of course, what happened, I got stuck halfway through the wall. And it was such a funny situation to be half in and half out of the wall that I realized that my expectation is what had caused that effect. And so as I got deeper into lucid dreaming, I realized expectation not only affected the dream state, but also affects our waking state as well. There's been numerous psychological studies that have shown that if you expect a group of children to do much better in their educational studies uh, uh, and tell the teachers that, then all of a sudden, at the end of the year, this group of students who were just randomly selective had done much better, but the teacher was expecting them to do better, and so somehow came about to teach them better. And so you see expectation throughout your life. There's a wonderful story that I brought up in the book of a young woman who became lucidly aware, and she saw that there was a place where she could buy wings to go flying for 25 cents. And so she bought these wings and was flying around very easily, but then she began to doubt the wings, like, oh, this is silly. Why would 25-cent wings make me fly better? And as soon as she doubted, she would fall to the earth. And she started to realize that her expectation and belief is what allowed her to fly easily. So a week later, she was at a job interview, and all of a sudden, she started to doubt herself in the job interview in waking reality. And then she remembered this lucid dream of the wings and decided that, oh no, she's not going to doubt herself. She's going to believe in herself. And as she talked about herself positively, she became more enthused about her talents and ended up getting the job. So you can see how expectation is kind of built into the subconscious framework, and it's that subconscious framework is what all of this conscious reality we're involved in, is based upon. So focusing on your expectations while you're awake is a super important thing to do, especially when you're trying to achieve or create new things.
And has it helped you in your waking life as well?
By becoming lucidly aware, you realize that the dream state is a co-creation of yourself, your knowing self or waking self within the lucid dream, and also your larger awareness. And so oftentimes I've taken those ideas from the lucid dreaming state into the waking state, and I've used expectation, I've analyzed my beliefs, I've looked at my intent, and by doing that sort of thing, it's really helped me in my waking life uh, not only become more lucid, but also help create things that otherwise probably I would have uh, not expected to create. And so by working with expectations, belief, my intent, my focus, my will, and that larger awareness, it's allowed me to create more than I had imagined previously.
Okay, that's good. In this part of the book, you also encourage readers, you talked about it just yet, to explore matter and walk through bricks and make dream maps. And you encourage readers to explore those as symbols of themselves. And what is your personal opinion? Are dreams about yourself, first and foremost?
Well, they certainly have a lot to do with yourself. But what I'm starting to see dreams as, instead of a message that your inner self is sending to you or something like that, uh, what I'm starting to see is that dreams are a platform in which information and energy gets exchanged. So in the dream, something is presented to you and you respond, and that energy goes throughout your psyche. Your response is sent throughout the psyche, and then new energy, new information is brought forward. You respond. And so it's kind of this, it's a platform of energy exchange, of information exchange. And so when you start to see dreaming in this way, you begin to realize that it's not a message that some inner self wrote out to you. The entire dream isn't a message. That you have to look at the response of the dreamer. How is the dreamer responding? Are they responding in fear? Are they responding with doubt? Are they responding with enthusiasm? How is the dreamer responding to what's being given to them? And if you begin to look at the responses, you realize where the conflicts are, where the hang up is, where the lack of belief, the lack of expectation exists. And you start to see it as this dialogue, this communication of the various parts of the self interacting with the ego waking self. So lucid dreaming gives a person a different perspective on the dream state in its entirety. Um, it's interesting. There's a wonderful book by Robert Johnson called Inner Work, and Robert Johnson, of course, was a prominent Jungian psychologist. But he brings up the practice of active imagination, which is very prominent in the Jungian dream work culture. And basically, the definition of active imagination is it's like being awake within a dream, except you're doing it while you meditate during the day. And so basically, active imagination is the waking life version of lucid dreaming. And so often in active imagination, you realize too that it's a dialogue of the waking self with the unconscious elements, and how you respond and all is very important. But that's what people need to take advantage of in dreaming and lucid dreaming, is seeing how they respond.
Mhm. So I like that a lot. Dreams as platforms of energy, and to take a dream as a key to unlock um, secrets about yourself, things you didn't know. I like that a lot.
Thanks.
I had my first insight in dream figures when I read Patricia Garfield's Creative Dreaming, because in the book she describes about a girl that walks up to Patricia Garfield, is also a very skilled lucid dreamer, and that girl, she walks up to Patricia and she says, "When are you going to realize that I represent your sexuality, because I'm always dressed in a miniskirt?" In your book you talk about how to approach dream figures in a lucid dream, and I've experienced as well that when I talk in a lucid dream and I've gotten into the habit of asking a dream figure, "What do you represent?" And sometimes some dream figures just look at you completely annoyed and then walk away a bit offended. And you explain things about how you can challenge those kind of things.
Yeah. Yes. It's one of the most fascinating things about lucid dreaming is it gives you the ability to consciously interact with dream figures. The problem has been that oftentimes, since lucid dreamers think that they control the dream, that they have somehow created or controlled the dream figures. So they'll go up to the dream figure and they'll say, "Do you know I'm dreaming you?" And oftentimes the dream figure will say, "Well, how do you know I'm not dreaming you?" And the lucid dreamer will think about that and say, "Well, look, I can fly." And the dream figure say, "Well, look, I can fly too." And so that's what happens in lucid dreams. You realize that dream figures are actually much more complex than you oftentimes consider. And so in my books, I encourage people to realize that some dream figures have much more awareness, much more vitality, much more energy. And so you should always be very respectful of dream figures. By being respectful, you want to ask open-ended questions like, "Who are you?" or "What do you represent?" Instead of telling the dream figure, "You're a creation of my mind," which oftentimes will piss them off and they'll turn away and look very annoyed. If you ask an open ended question, "Who are you? What do you represent?" oftentimes you'll find that some dream figures are much more conversant and aware. But as you get into this, you just begin to realize that there's different levels of dream figures, that all dream figures are not created equal. And so you have to be consciously aware of who you're interacting with, because some dream figures will be more aware than you, the lucid dreamer, oftentimes. Or some dream figures will be consciously aware before you become aware, and they will have caused you to become aware because of their activities. And so Paul Thoele, the German Gestalt psychologist, brought this up and said that it was impossible to prove that these dream figures who were very consciously aware had conscious awareness, but from his perspective, they appeared to have some sort of conscious awareness. And so that's a very important thing to be aware of. So by asking open-ended questions, you can get to an understanding of what the dream figure is really all about. And it's also much the same with dream objects. In a lucid dream, we oftentimes play with dream objects or we're confronted with dream objects. And you begin to realize after a while that a dream object is formed mental energy. So if you, in a lucid dream, want to see a red Ferrari, you can announce to yourself with your intent, "Now when I open up that next door, I'll see a red Ferrari." And so in a way, you're projecting mental energy, but you're forming it into a mental model. And you open the door, and there it is. And so you begin to see that the energetic nature of the dream is such that you can explore it thoughtfully if you understand some of these basic principles. But until you have some of these insights, oftentimes you'll just work from a very simple level and probably insult a lot of dream figures and not understand oftentimes what the dream is showing you.
Okay, well, thank you. Let's move on to part 3 of your book. What I consider part 3 of your book is not that you divided your book in 4 parts. It's the distinction that I make. Lucid dreaming and healing. Well, to me, all dreaming is about healing. And the thing I conclude on reading both of your books is that you have a very keen sense of balancing energies. Do you think that balancing energy is healing?
I do think looking at energy, thinking about energy, thinking about mental energy and our emotional energy is fundamentally healing. Because when things are disproportionate one way or the other, you're not really in a state of harmony, a state of balance. Uh, you're in a place where you need some resolution. And so healing in lucid dreams occurs in a number of different ways. There's the psychological and emotional healing that a person can achieve, and also there's the idea of physical healing as well. So in a lucid dream, I feel that we have the ability to bring things into balance that may have gotten out of balance, and by playing around with this in this laboratory of the mind of the lucid dream, you can see how it really comes to work. So yes, I feel that lucid dreaming can give us a lot of insight not only into our own self, but also the actual nature of reality, the nature of the psyche, and the field of psychology if they would look at it more deeply.
Mhm. Yes, I agree. Um, I think that this book and your first book also has really got a Jungian flavor to it. Confronting the shadow, embracing your dark parts and getting them integrated in your own self. Um, is there any evidence that Jung was a lucid dreamer as well?
I have never been able to find Carl Jung talking about a lucid dream. Uh, it seems like there's been a number of cases where he's had semi lucid dreams where he kind of understands within the dream that it's a dream, but he never comes to that full lucidity of realizing, oh, this is a dream. And so I haven't been able to find any evidence that he is, but again, through his use of uh, active imagination is much like a waking lucid dream. And so he certainly understood the issues of interacting with unconscious energies and all these kind of things, I feel. But it doesn't seem like he was technically a lucid dreamer, though. But if I'm wrong, I hope someone will write me and tell me differently.
Yeah. Do you think that practicing those active imagination techniques in waking life will ease your way into lucid dreaming?
It might make you more comfortable or more experienced once you do become a lucid dreamer, because by being good at active imagination, you start to become aware of the contents of your unconscious mind. And oftentimes in lucid dreaming, that's what happens as well. And so by doing it in the active imagination state, it doesn't surprise you when things necessarily change or some dream figure seems to have a lot of energy and wants to be in a dialogue or something. And so I think it would be good practice for lucid dreaming. I don't know if it will help you have more lucid dreams, but if nothing else, I think it'd be good practice for that lucid dream state and how to interact once you become lucidly aware.
Yeah, I think so too. Um, in your part about emotional healing, you talk about a very fascinating part of the relationship between the heart and emotions. And well, dreams originate in the brain, and there is also a clear brain-heart connection. You talk in the part in your book about healing about the brain-heart connection. You tell a wonderful story about how a heart surgeon tells you or tells another dreamer that when he wanted to understand the heart, that he studied psychology. And you tell in the book about the brain-heart connection. So, healing in dreams, is it about balancing out your emotion and your ratio, your inner balance?
Well, the beautiful thing about lucid dreaming is it gives us a platform where we can work on emotional issues and psychological issues and come to a resolution of them. Currently, lucid dreaming is being used by some therapists to help people who have recurring nightmares from post traumatic stress disorder. And so they teach the person who's having the recurring nightmares, oh, you can become consciously aware when that repeating habit starts to occur and realize you're dreaming. And oftentimes, when those people become consciously aware, lucid, just one time in one of these recurring nightmares, normally the nightmares will cease or be severely diminished, and they'll start to have a regular sleep life again. So that doesn't resolve all the issue, but of PTSD, but it does give them at least their sleep back. But in my book, and Carolyn McCready spent a lot of time writing this chapter on emotional healing, we bring up the ideas of using lucid dreams to work on phobias, work on fears that you might have, and recognize those fears. I remember Caroline, once in a lucid dream, she announced that now she wanted to experience her deepest fear. And all of a sudden, there was a figure of death there. And oh, she was so stunned and shocked and amazed that she decided to wake up. And when she woke up, she was having a false awakening, and laying in bed next to her was death. Death had followed her into the waking state, and then she woke up for good. But it shows you how that a month later, after she had time to think about it and process it and all, she began to work through her fear of death, and she decided in her next lucid dream she was going to encounter this again. And in her next lucid dream, when she encountered it, now she was able to do it from a much more thoughtful, mature, and just not a reactive framework. And she had an incredibly powerful experience of kind of understanding death and realizing the necessity of death and the beauty and power of death. And so in lucid dreams, we can work through our phobias, whether they're fear of heights or fear of snakes or whatever they are, but we can also work through some of these deeper fears, some of these shadow issues. So lucid dreaming allows the heart and audience in that dream state, the ability of the heart, the emotions can finally get recognized if we allow ourselves to recognize them. And there we can bring our conscious mind to see what the issue of the heart is, and hopefully in that state come to some sort of resolution. So that's one of the beautiful things about lucid dreaming. There's also some wonderful stories that are coming out of people who are using lucid dreams to resolve feelings of generalized anxiety, to resolve obsessive compulsive habits that they have. And so I'm thinking that one reason we wanted to have this chapter in the book is to help psychology and psychologists to think, how could you use this state in a therapeutic way to help people overcome some of these issues and understand the nature of the psyche? Because there's a wonderful example in a recent book by Charlie Morley in which a gentleman who had attended his workshop became lucidly aware that night. And so in the lucid dream, he's having a lot of fun and going around, but he kept noticing that there was this one woman who was following him around. And finally, he turned to the woman and he asked, "Who are you?" And she said, I represent your brain, and I have come here to ask you to stop smoking." And he was really shocked, and he said, "You've come to ask me to stop smoking." And she goes, "Yes, it's not good for you, and we've come to ask you to stop smoking." And so then the lucid dreamer thought, well, wait a second. Um, every time I've tried to stop smoking, I always have cravings or desires to start smoking after I stop. He told the brain, or the representation of the brain, he told it, look, if you can stop those cravings, if you can stop those desires when I'm awake, then I'll try to stop smoking. And the brain responded, well, we'll see what we can do. The gentleman said that when he woke up, he had zero interest in smoking. It was like all the cravings, all the desires were being stopped. And he said he could hang out with other smokers and had no interest in smoking. And so it's interesting to see how you could take with like obsessive compulsive disorder, let's say your fear of germs or your need to wash your hands, if you could create a dream figure, the representation of it, and then come to a resolution to make some sort of constructive arrangement where it would resolve the issue, some of these people really might wake up with the issue resolved, and the science of psychology would get some insight of new ways at a subconscious level of resolving issues. But there's a lot to learn here, and but that's one of the reasons we wanted to have this issue in this book for beginners, is to see how you go about doing it, how you use this state of lucid dreaming to resolve emotional issues, and come to understand some of these inner aspects that you might have been ignoring for your entire life.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh,
That's
because I was a smoker once, and being around smokers when you stop smoking, that's quite a challenge. So I'm very impressed by this dream.
Yeah.
The thing that I really like about your part in the book about healing is the idea of meditating in a dream. I thought it was so cool because it never crossed my mind. How did you get that idea?
You know, this is one of those beautiful things of just lucid dreamers getting together. I believe I first heard about this at an International Association for the Study of Dreams conference. Another lucid dreamer came up to me and asked me, in all my years of lucid dreaming, have I ever tried to meditate? And it occurred to me at that time that I'd never done that, even though I'd been lucid dreaming for 20 years. And so in my next lucid dream, when I did it, I had the most profound experience once I began to meditate in the lucid dream. So in this chapter, Caroline McCready, my co-author, talked to a lot of people, interviewed a lot of people who had meditated in their lucid dreams. And one thing we realized is meditation means different things to different people. For some people, meditating means emptying your mind, letting everything go. For other people, it's chanting a mantra or a sacred sound. For some people, meditating is a visualization, and so there's all different types of meditation. But what she did find is that people who meditated in a lucid dream normally reported a sense of transcendence, or a sense of oneness, or a sense of utter harmony and calm, or they had an extraordinarily profound experience when they meditated in a lucid dream. Another thing that came from it was talking with a wonderful lucid dreamer, Claire Johnson, and she has a doctorate in psychology. She said that because she began to meditate frequently in lucid dreams, that all of a sudden it made her waking life meditation that much more easier. So think of, in her waking life, what might have taken her 20 minutes to get to a deep state. Now, after having done it in lucid dreams 5 or 10 times, now in the waking state, it was like she had worked through all the issues, and now she could get there in 5 minutes, what used to take her 20 minutes. And so by practicing in the lucid dream state, that skill, that ability, that speed adapted over to the waking life and just made her waking meditations that much more profound. So I really encourage all people who are lucid dreamers, if you want to have an incredible experience, just stop what you're doing in a lucid dream and decide to meditate. And oftentimes you'll have a truly profound lucid dream.
Yeah, wow. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks.
The last part of your book is about living lucidly. And in my eyes, you do it. You live lucidly because you are a very long history of lucid dreaming. And what I really, really like about the books that you have written is that you always give an edge. You always, for me, you let me see the different side of things, and you turn things upside down, like meditating in a lucid dream. So, what in your eyes is lucid dreaming, and what advice can you give us?
Yes. So lucid dreaming, of course, is really based on realization, realizing within the dream that it's a dream. But oftentimes when I say that, I need to talk about what I think a dream is. A dream to me is a co-created reality. It's a creation of my waking ego conscious self along with this larger awareness, which is why I call my first book Lucid Dreaming, Gateway to the Inner Self, is that lucid dreaming allows you to engage this larger awareness. So a dream is a co-created reality. It's a creation. A dream is not a fantasy, it's not whimsy, it's not nothing. A dream is a creation. And when you can experiment with this in a lucid dream, you also begin to realize that this waking reality that we're all involved in is also a type of creation. That this waking reality that we experience is often based on our beliefs, expectations, focus, those sort of things, and our larger awareness all engaging this waking reality. And when you start to see that even the ancient writers of Sanskrit, they called Maya, that we translate as illusion, that's not originally what it meant. Maya meant a creative transformation. It meant a thing created. And so when they're talking about this waking world that we're involved in, this is also a creation. And so like when I worked on these books, I had to work through my beliefs. Would people understand me? Would people agree? Would people doubt? I had to work through my feelings, my emotions, my own inner experience. And by knowing that I had to work through that in order to express myself, it just made it so much easier to express myself. And so that's how oftentimes I go about in life. I use these ideas, these insights from lucid dreaming to inform my life so that it becomes easier. Because I've begun to see lucid dreams and waking reality and regular dreams, they're co-creations of this mental and emotional energy that we have of the self and the larger awareness working together. So that it's really helped me quite a bit. I talk about in my first book. So I had a profound lucid dream that helped me write that first book. I found myself in a farmhouse in the south of the U.S. and I was sitting at a kitchen table while the farm wife was making beans at the stove. And when she put beans on my plate, suddenly it occurred to me, I don't live in the South in a farmhouse. And I became lucidly aware. And I realized at that moment that someone was behind me. And so in the Jungian view of things, oftentimes the shadow takes the position behind you. And so I'd already, by that time in my lucid dream life, taught myself a basic rule to always go to the area of the most energy, the most emotion. And so I felt that was the area of the most energy. So I turned and I saw that there was an attractive black woman behind me. I picked her up and I put her right in front of me. And I looked her straight in the eyes and asked her, "Who are you? Who are you?" And she told me, "I am a discarded aspect of yourself." And at that moment, as a lucid dreamer, I had to think in my mind, how do you respond to a discarded aspect of yourself? And so I realized if it's been discarded, it wants to be totally accepted. And so from my heart, and really focusing on my heart, I totally and utterly accepted it. And that's when the incredible thing happened. It shrank down into wisp of colored light that entered my body as wisp of as bits of light. And this light energy came into my body, and it gave me such a jolt that I woke up. In the morning, I realized I was a different person somehow. Energetically, I was different. And it was a week later that I realized that all that week I'd been thinking, oh, I should try to write that book on lucid dreaming, which was a project that I'd given up 2 or 3 years earlier. I had discarded because it just seemed so impossible. And so by reintegrating with that energy that was shown to me in the lucid dream, that discarded energy, all that discarded hope that I'd had 3 years earlier, by reintegrating with that energy, now is able to complete that first book. And so through the use of dreams and lucid dreams and through the use of waking things, you can really learn to live more lucidly. And by living more lucidly, you also will suddenly find that you're more creative, that you're producing more, that you're creating more, that it's coming out of you more naturally. So that's one of the wonderful advantages, I think, of lucid dreaming for anyone individually.
Oh, thank you. That was a beautiful story.
Thanks.
A question that I haven't asked you that you really think, this one I want to answer.
The real question, I think, of lucid dreaming is, what does it show us about the true nature of the reality, the true nature of the psyche? And I think when you become consciously aware within the dream, you have that ability to experiment. You can do scientific experiments, ones like Stephen LaBerge and Ursula Voss and other people do. But you can also do your own personal experiments about the nature of the psyche, the nature of awareness. For example, for me, when I began to meditate in a lucid dream, when I began to empty my mind, what happened was the dream began to be stripped away as if it was like a movie screen. And when it was stripped away, the brilliant light came through. And that was when the moment I realized that my mental energy, or the energy coming through my mind, helps create this movie, this dream. And when I empty my mind, what happens is that I see the natural energy, the natural mental and emotional energy that is behind all of this. And so lucid dreaming in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, or the tradition of dream yoga, is really a way of seeing the true nature of the mind. And that's what I'm trying to introduce people to by talking about mental energy in this first book on lucid dreaming, plain and simple, in this first book for beginners, is to get them to think about the dream as an energetic expression. Because when you begin to do that, then I think you get new insights into the nature of the dream reality and also into the nature of this reality as well. But it's a wonderful journey. It's a great gift, lucid dreaming, and it's not that it's the most important things. Dreams in and of themselves are fascinating and powerful. And so I don't want to say that lucid dreams are better than regular dreaming, but dreams altogether will give us a new sense of our total self and help us integrate that for our better life.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Robert Waggoner, for talking about lucid dreaming plain and simple. If you want to buy it, please do me a favor and use the link in my blog, because you will give Mindfunda a little kickback fee, and I really would appreciate that. It's a very good book, and I really, really, really like the how-to exercises, because I'm a person that really likes to do things. Thank you for telling us so much about your newest book, and I hope you have a pleasant day.
Oh, thanks, Susanne. It's been very, very much fun. So best wishes to you and lucid wishes to all the listeners.